Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, the one and only Ana Lacher. Thank you for being here, Ana.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, spoiler alert for all of you loyal listeners. Anna's my first cousin. Fine. Her sister Samantha's been a guest. So she's my first cousin. We're going to talk about the fam. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about what it was like to grow up being the Keep Hustling fam that we were. Maybe we won't. Yeah. But spoiler alert. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Where are you currently located?
I'm currently in the Manhattan West Plaza, which is just adjacent to Hudson Yards, between Moynihan Station and the Vessel, basically. And I'm in the basement, very chic, of Cisiamo Restaurant.
So anyone who can, all I have to say is everyone should be watching this on YouTube. Not that you shouldn't be subscribing on all your favorite podcast platforms, but this has nothing to do with the podcast, but there is a massive stack of paper over your left shoulder.
Can see that?
Which we can see here. It's great. It's fine. You know what? That's what this pod is about. It's about enjoying and embracing and learning from people's hustle. I can see it, and it's great. And so anyone who thinks that the hospitality industry is paperless is a liar. So we'll go from there. But let's jump right in.
I can tell you what they are. These are all
us.
of our invoices. So anything we order for the restaurant: food, dairy, paper products, silverware, alcohol, go in this pile. This is mostly from the savory side. The alcohol ones go in a separate pile. And we have to scan these, and then it goes into a digital land, and then the accounting team takes over.
Okay, wait. So take a step back. Yeah. Tell us, you said you're in the basement of a restaurant, of a hotel.
Yeah.
And you were talking about restaurant receipts. Tell us briefly, what do you do? Where are you at?
Yeah. So I work under the Danny Meyer restaurant umbrella, under the Union Square Hospitality Group restaurant umbrella. I work at Cisiamo, which is our newest property. We opened in October of 2021, right? We're in 2023, yes. And I run the events program, actually. So when I first started, there were two of us. I was the junior person and we had a senior person. And then this past fall, we both got promoted. So shout out to both of us. She is now in a director role, and I'm now the senior event sales manager at Cisiamo. So any private dining or group dining inquiry I touch.
Okay, so let me just be clear. Everyone who's listening, if you're subscribed to the pod, if you're doing anything that you need any sort of planning with the hospitality group that Anna is affiliated with, follow her, reach out to her.
Yeah.
Do not. Unless you get us like, I don't know, 10,000 subscribers or something like that, do not reach out for reservation on a busy night.
Don't do that. Yeah.
If you can prove to me that you got us 10,000 subscribers to the pod, then maybe I'll make a call for you. But other than that, you do not want that action.
No.
So your career, I know you've been, first of all, I am fascinated by the hospitality industry. You've been in the hospitality industry basically, I think, your whole career, right?
That's the only job
New
I've
Orleans,
ever had.
New York, and but let's take a step back. Tell us about what in your upbringing led you to want to be in the hospitality industry. That I assume it's very people focused and that, but it's also an insane time commitment and busy, whatever. So take us back to kind of what inspired you to get into that industry.
It truly was an accident. My mom, your aunt, has
Shout
always been Aunt Ava. We love her. She's always been interested in food and restaurants. And I grew up in a house where we were cooking. We watched a lot of the Food Network. It was just kind of something. Yeah, we did. It was a lot of it was something that was always kind of on my radar. We went to restaurants, my parents took us out to eat. We weren't going anywhere fancy, but we were always out. Not always out, but we went out. And I have nice memories of being in restaurants. And I always thought that bartending just seemed really cool. when I was in high school, I was like, oh, Coyote Ugly, what a vibe, which now how times have changed. But so I was in college and I got a restaurant job, um, truly because I needed to pay my rent. I was curious about it. I wanted to do something that seemed super fun and be able to, be around my friends and also just be the life of the party. Um, I love having a good time. Um, I love hanging out.
but not but you've come off the Coyote Ugly situation.
I've come very far from the Coyote Ugly situation for sure.
Well, let me ask you about that. I want to ask you about that for a second. So
Yeah.
I believe that in every industry there's this like glorified view of what it is. It's kind of like, when you see professional athletes and you see that they made it big, you don't realize that many of them spent like years sleeping on couches, flying just to, wearing ripped shoes. So like you didn't, you mentioned that was kind of like, you like to have a good time, you like to hang out, which I know you're a big people person, you do things like that. But then you get into an industry, and I'm guessing that especially early on, it wasn't a lot of like hanging out and partying the way you thought it was.
And what's so funny is my first restaurant job was actually at a fine dining restaurant. And the way it works in restaurants, most of the time when you don't have a skill set, you cannot simply walk in off the street and say, hello, I'm kind and smart and quick to learn, and I think I should bartend at your restaurant. There's a hierarchy. You got to work your way up. And so I had been in touch with a friend, and I said her, she said, I'm working at this restaurant. She was working for a pretty well-known chef in New Orleans at the time. And I said, do they need bartenders? She said, I don't think so, but I know we need hosts. So I emailed her general manager and I walked in, and it was like one of the fanciest places I had ever stepped foot. There was tablecloths, there was servers in suits, there were back waiters, the bartenders were all black, the kitchen had a system, it was quiet, it was thoughtful. And so quickly I realized you don't walk in just anywhere, and ask to be a bartender.
But like, I need a new wardrobe if I'm going to work here.
Pretty much. That's pretty much what happened. And I remember the GM interviewed me and he said, I'm not that worried about the fact that you don't have any experience because you seem really great. So I'm going to hire you. We can teach you to run the front. We can teach you the system. But you just are you're on it. You're polite. You're kind. You're thoughtful. You're warm. You're welcoming. And that's what we need. And that job truly changed the trajectory of my life. We did not grow up in a hospitality family. And it was at the same time that I got that job, the chef that I was working for was being featured on that season's Top Chef. So it was also cool to see some of these people I work with on TV, and to kind of see behind the curtain a little bit. So I got very lucky, that I landed where I did when I did.
So, okay, so what is it like when you land in a restaurant? I assume it was it was an established place, right? So,
yeah.
So, and you mentioned there was a system, like, so you go for this interview. I'm literally picturing this. I never knew this story before. And like, I can imagine you're like, wait, hold on. Like, this is how kitchens look. Like, yeah, I've watched a lot of Food Network, but like, these people are quiet and there's a method. And oh my gosh, they start at 5 o'clock in the morning, which you learn later, I assume. Like, there's actually people here at 5 o'clock in the morning making that stock that's going in it.
Yeah.
Whatever. But what was it like when you kind of saw the inner workings of the restaurant? Did you feel more passionate about working in restaurants? Did you think it got a bad rap, a good rap? Was it anything like what you thought it was going to be?
It was actually so intimidating. I was the youngest in the room by far. And I was a Tulane student, which, after working in a lot of restaurants at Tulane, some of them filter through. I was in an environment where most of the people in leadership were men. And it was very intimidating, and I was very, very nervous that I was going to mess something up. And it took me a while to realize that most of the mistakes that you make at a restaurant can be undone. a mistake that you make is not, making the same mistake that a stockbroker might make, and then you have cost someone millions of dollars.
Unless you kill someone with an
Unless you
allergy
kill
or something
someone,
like
correct. We definitely don't want to kill someone.
I'm pretty sure you can't come back from killing someone. I'm pretty sure.
You're right. You can't come back from killing someone. But I remember actually, again, having a conversation with my mom, and I was explaining to her how it felt so stressful. And then I literally ran the play with her. And I said, at 5 o'clock, this has to happen. And then after this happens, this thing happens. And it's important to keep in the mind that everyone has to have a big table in their section. And if you're a VIP, you can't sit in this section. But if somebody specifically requests it, and I ran the playbook with her, and she said, what is it that is intimidating to you? Because you just took me through a dinner service. We're sitting in the car. You're not even in front of the reservation system. You did it. So I don't know what you're worried about, but you're going to be fine.
God, I love that. First of all, parents have, especially moms, have this way of like, when they tell you everything's going to be okay, it kind of works out to be okay. You kind of like feel that.
Yeah.
But what's that? So this is totally, I've known through the podcast, but I'm just fascinated with this. I love it when you go to a restaurant and there's that person standing in front of you, and they ask to move their table. And there's like one empty table in a corner, which clearly is there for a reason. It's not like, we're giving you this 2-top over here in the middle, and that 8-top we're just going to leave there in the corner just to collect dust with it. And they're like, no, I want that 2 seats at that table now. Yeah. And you're like, it's not going to go down like that. So I totally respect that. I think it's like that in any service business. And I think that there's a delicate balance between not forgetting the fact that people are human.
Yep.
Like I'm in a service business. And one of the things that it's a double-edged sword, because sometimes you're like, what bad thing is really going to happen? How bad could it get? Right. You can always fix a mistake, which helps you not get overwhelmed, but you also don't want to not focus on the goal and not say this table is the most important table, this seating, this event is the most important, because then you might not do your best. So I guess in your business, it's like a super difficult balance between like, who cares, it's just one entree, 2.
Right. And that comes with time, learning, kind of with anything. And you can tell from the beginning when someone is going to be challenging, by the questions they ask, by some of the negotiations they try to make early on. Well, what if we want to do this? I'm so sorry, we don't have that option, but it's something that I want. Can I pay extra? Sometimes money does not always talk in this business. If we don't have a kitchen that can plate 40 entrees at one time, you can't have a plated dinner. Right. And that is just the reality.
So I assume you had to pivot also when you went to the event side of things, right? I feel like managing an event is also a different beast than managing a restaurant with that flow of tickets and things like that.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because I remember the hardest adjustment. So in the restaurant, maybe you're familiar with this term, we call it in the weeds. It's our version of being in the shits. And when
nobody is that's a restaurant term? Being in the weeds is a restaurant term?
I mean, that's where I learned it.
Okay, fine. The restaurant industry has just taken over being in the weeds. If you're stuck in it and you have a deadline to meet and you're in the weeds, all of a sudden you're stealing from the restaurant industry. Okay, whatever. Go ahead. Yes, okay. Novel terms we're learning here on the Keep Hustling podcast.
You can cut that out. No, just kidding.
No, we're not. We're keeping it in.
Keep it in. So the hardest part about transitioning from the restaurant and being on the floor and transitioning into the event side of things was that being in the weeds took on a whole new meaning. I could stand in a dining room. I used to think of running service as playing a game. And when I would serve, sometimes they would have me train people. And it was very difficult for me to train people because I would be standing and looking at the room and running the play. So table 10 just got seated. They need water. Table 4 is going to be a 6-top. Only 2 people are there, so I can wait a second to get to them. I have table 3's order. I have table 2's drink order. How can I consolidate?
Now I know why cigarettes are so popular in the restaurant industry. The stress of that, I'm stressed out literally sitting here.
I used to treat the floor like a play. And I could theoretically walk into a restaurant that I had never been in before and be able to pinpoint what needed to happen. It's different everywhere, but at the end of the day, somebody needs to be greeted. Somebody needs a water refilled. Somebody has that look on their face that is the excuse me, and they're trying not to do one of these. Um, and so when I transitioned to the events role, I was using my brain totally differently. Having an inbox of 150 emails hits so different than running a dinner service of 250 people. You know what 250 people is going to feel like after you've done it enough times. And you have days where 250 feels like you did 500 people in the rain with, nobody was turning their tables. And sometimes 250 felt like it was a 50-person day. We had no walk-ins. But that pivot of being in the weeds and having to prioritize because everyone needs a response. Usually in a restaurant, you can placate somebody, you can kind of pass it off. But when you're the only person and somebody is doing the just following up, just bringing this up to the top, and then you think to yourself, are we okay? Am I going to make it?
Right. Is this person going to complain to my boss? Like, meaning in a
Right.
restaurant, you're right. I guess you're right. In the dinner service world, it's like we can fix this one meal. We can fix this one dinner. Worst
Right.
case, if it was a total train wreck, we can offer them to come back for a better experience.
Yep.
But like this one event at this one time that you've been planning a lot in advance, not just, you weren't on the kitchen side, so I guess you weren't planning that. That's a whole different skill set. That's wild.
Yeah. And to your point of not being on the kitchen side, I'm not on the kitchen side, but if I don't set the kitchen up for success, it comes back to me.
But that's what I'm saying. I feel like on the event side, you have to think about that more.
Yes.
Than at a table, you're like, oh, we missed this entree. We'll fire it for you. And like you could
totally,
like a well-run kitchen can absorb that tension.
Exactly.
As opposed to we dropped the ball on this thing at the event. I forgot to tell you to order this thing.
Right.
And now it's the day before.
Send out the hors d'oeuvres. Right. We, they needed shellfish free and, I didn't catch it. And now we have this thing. And so.
Gosh, it's so stressful.
You get used to it though.
Is there anything more satisfying or epic than when a service goes like bam, 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 bam? Like you just, like you said, you stand there and watch the play.
Yeah.
Like, is there anything better than when you, I assume like the best thing for you is when you're watching the restaurant or now an event and you're doing that, watching the play and the game is progressing without you even having to step in.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is
feels
moving.
Good.
This dance is kind of, it's kind of moving in a good place.
Yeah, it's the best. The only other high that I experience that's like a real high is when I cross the finish line after running a half marathon. And that's a different high. Yeah. It hits something really different.
Not for me. I would love to watch you from the sideline.
Yeah, you can wait.
Let me ask you this. So you've had a lot of different things in your career. You mentioned the moment where you went for that interview. You mentioned when I assume when you moved to New York and then you moved to the event side. Can you take us, was there like a pivotal moment, a pivotal service, a pivotal meeting, a pivotal event that kind of, you can take us back to where it was like, okay, here's the challenge, here's the play as you call it, and then it works out and that kind of changes your career trajectory? Because I think a lot of people would not stay in the hospitality industry as long as you have.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that because there's a tremendous amount of burnout. Because as we've been talking about, there's a bunch of psychos and you got to deal with that and crazy hours and crazy timelines and crazy deadlines. So I'm totally.
Yeah.
Like, was there a moment where you're like, wow, we could totally do this?
So there is actually. And then there's kind of like the bigger picture of that question. So I was working at a restaurant that was in a hotel in New Orleans. I worked for a restaurant group that had multiple properties. So I kind of bounced around. And that was sort of the first indicator that I was doing something right, was that there was room for me to grow and to go to the restaurants that were harder to run. And I remember GM at the time, his name is Drew Meir. And he is still one of my favorite GMs.
Shout out Drew Meir.
Shout out Drew Meir.
Hope you're listening to the pod. Yeah. Drop a comment, a like, give us a subscribe. Shout out to you.
Drew Meir. I met his wife. His wife was having dinner at the restaurant. And I went up to her and I said, Melanie, hi, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Ana. And she said, oh my gosh, Ana, it is such a pleasure to meet you. Drew speaks so highly of you. And I said, I was shocked. I thought Drew talks to me about his wife, like talks about me to his wife. what is this man? I said, I hope, I think I made a joke and I said, I hope, he has nice things to say. And she said, he knows that when you are here, you have your finger on the pulse. And then I started piecing together that on Saturday afternoons, when it was kind of the JV crew, he would call me at the service break to ask how lunch went and then to talk about dinner. And I realized that pretty quickly that I thought, oh, okay, the GM is calling me to check in. And I remember I didn't realize that that was weird until I had mentioned it to another manager who had been in the restaurant longer than I had. And I said, oh, sorry, Drew just called me. And he said, Drew called you? I said, yeah, he just called to check in. He wants to know how service is going. And he said, Drew doesn't call me on the weekends. Okay, well, Drew called me. And that was really the moment where I thought, okay, I'm doing something right. And then the second part of that was when I was ready to leave that restaurant group. I just started hustling. I was reaching out to people that I knew that had worked at that restaurant group in New Orleans. There was another restaurant group called the Link Group, which was the last group I was at before I moved. And I remember
because we needed you back in NYC. We needed it.
Yeah, I needed to come back. The world needed it. She's happy she's here.
That's it.
And I remember I took an interview there. I was ready to be done with this company. I said I gotta go. And I didn't get the job. And then I happened to have gone in for lunch, and the GM who I had interviewed with said, "Did you ever hear back from HR?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay, stay tuned. Like, I don't feel good about that." And the next day I heard from the GM at their sister property, and they said, "Hi, we want to bring you in for an interview." And I went in for an interview, and then it actually ended up kind of being a group interview. I met with all of the managers. It was very alarming. I was not expecting it. And I remember when I walked away from that, he said, "We're all aligned. We really like you. We're really excited. So stay tuned," kind of. And one of those managers actually asked me a similar question to what you asked me. And I told them that story about Drew. So it really was that moment where it kind of hit for me that I thought, okay, I can coach this team. I can run this play.
I think what I have found in doing this podcast, and one of the I talk on a lot of the episodes of why I started this podcast, why we're doing this, or who we hope we can inspire and how we can inspire them. And one of the things that I've seen the most is the power of a mentor, and the moment where the mentor tells the mentee, like, it's never an official "I'm your mentor, you're my mentee" type thing. Yeah. It's like when the person who's being mentored feels that mentor wants to see them succeed, like their business child, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. That moment is the most inspirational moment for the hustle, because it's like two things happen. It's not just I'm scared that I'm going to fail another person who's my mentor, but it's like, hold on, if this person who's where I want to be is saying I could do it. It's not my mom cheering me on in the background, or my best friend saying you got this, or it's okay that you had a bad day. It's the person who's in the seat that I want to be in is telling me you can do it. You're like, that's it, I can do it.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah.
Gosh, well, that's amazing. Okay, I got to ask you a question, which you can plead the fifth on. We're not going to edit this out, but you can plead the fifth. It's totally fine.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be the same person. I just thought of this off the cuff. The most famous / and or the most intimidating person you've ever had to serve or host for.
The most famous person that has ever been in a restaurant that I was managing, I think. Oh, the Obamas. They came to Chisiamo, but I didn't really have anything to do with them, but I did walk by the table, so that was cool.
1 second. Hold on. Okay, we got to dig into this. This is great. This is what's going to take the podcast viral. So was he the president then, or was it after him being the president?
No, it was after he was the president.
Okay. Is it true that people eat their food before they do to make sure it's not poison?
I cannot confirm.
But you can't deny it.
I can't deny it either.
Like somebody told me that there was like this bit with when President Obama was the president, he went and he got like, I don't know if he was on the campaign trail or he was trying to build morale, and he like stopped at a local hot dog spot or something. And there was this whole conspiracy afterwards. Social media wasn't really like TikTok wasn't where it is today, but apparently there was a conspiracy afterwards where like he orders the hot dog. And I think the bit was he offered to pay for Biden. There was something like that. Yeah. And then apparently they take the hot dog right out of his hand. like afterwards, and he's not allowed to eat it.
I did not see that happen, but I can say that there is a lot. That was the safest I've ever been in this building. There was a lot of Secret Service and a lot of plainclothes.
Isn't it crazy when they leave and like 3/4 of the restaurant just clears out in a second?
Yeah, and they went through the service elevator, which is the least glamorous. And I said something to one of the Secret Service people. I said, like, sorry, you have to stand here, because I happened to have cleared a table. And they said, don't worry, this is what we do. Because oftentimes the service elevators are through the kitchen, through the dish pit, through the back alley where they store the linen. It is not glamorous.
But it's the safest.
It is the safest. And it's the most discreet, because our dish pit at Chisiamo, you can come out of it and there's a little table that it's a fine table. It's a very nice table to sit at. I think actually Uncle D sat at that table one time. But that being said, to
My
get
Uncle
to that
D, by the way.
table, your Uncle D, not my, I see that. Yes, your Uncle D, my dad. For those listening, we both had Uncle D's.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
were you like nervous that someone was gonna like spill the water on them?
I wasn't.
And then like a
because
bunch of people start shooting people because they think you're trying to take them out. Like that's what would scare me. Not like, oh, an innocent mistake.
The security was so tight around it that I had heard that somebody tried to take a photo and Secret Service said you have to delete that.
Oh, but I'm thinking like, first of all, you could totally delete them and just leave it in recently deleted, but like whatever. But I'm thinking like, if I was in the restaurant at that moment, I'd be like, am I holding this knife? Like wrong? Like I always, whatever.
Right.
Like I'm bringing a knife to another table.
Yeah.
I'm like, walk within 20 feet of them and someone's going to think like, I'm just trying to clear this plate. And they're like,
I'm just bad at clearing a table.
Right. That guy's trying to stab the former president. Boom. They like take you down.
Yeah. I don't know. The server said she was okay. She was a little nervous, but she went through it.
Big tip. Definitely big tip.
I hope so. Who else?
It's got to be a big tip. It's got to be a pre-tip. That's got to be pre-tipped. It's got to be taken care of before. It's got to be.
I think it is. I
100%.
remember.
Okay.
Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. Oh, actually, that first hosting job that year, the restaurant, it was Valentine's Day, and it was either, okay, you have to educate me here on my basketball. Valentine's Day would have been NBA.
NBA? Was it NBA or
I think
college?
it was NBA. No, it was NBA because Dirk Nowitzki came into the restaurant.
So it might have been All-Star Weekend, might be around
weekend.
there.
It was All-Star Weekend and Valentine's Day. So there were
welcome,
a ton
people.
of, thank you. So there were a ton of celebrities in the restaurant, and that was really a lot for me because everybody had to go to their certain seat and it was strategically laid out in such a way, and assistants had called and they wanted some people to be in the back and some people didn't care, and Elvis Costello was happy to sit with whoever he sat, but Dirk wanted to be in the back, and he was
God,
so
he's
tall.
huge. How does he even sit at a table?
So tall. He's so tall.
Gosh. Wow, that's
I'm trying
awesome.
To think if anybody
and I guess they're just regular people, right? We would work with celebrities also, but it's just there's this moment where you feel like if I do well by them, the karma is just going to keep going, even though you should be like that with everyone. Like I just feel like people kind of think that way. Have you ever gotten like a nasty? This was totally off script, but I'm loving this podcast.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten like a nasty review, like you've looked at a review on the site or on like Yelp, and like known it was like because somebody had a negative interaction with you?
With me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
That's horrible.
There definitely have been those
and you just like
times.
want to get on there and just like start. God, that's great.
Yeah. It's definitely happened before. I try not to let, this is the hardest part about the service industry. We're people. We are taking care of you, but we're still people. We're not robots. So when you are unkind to me and then I have to stand there and look you in the eye, it's truly the worst. And I did have a group in New Orleans one time be very awful to me, so much so that the table next to them handed me a 20 on their way out and they said, go get yourself a drink on us.
You know what the other thing is about especially your part of the service industry, like the hospitality side? Everybody, rightfully so, thinks that they're going out for this business meeting, special occasion, anniversary, and like they are the most important person in the world at that moment, always at a restaurant. Like, okay, some people can, like in my business, someone forgets to pay, so we have to remind them so their insurance doesn't cancel. They don't think they're the most important person in the world. They messed up and we're trying to help them, right?
Right.
Here it's like, this is the once a year that I go out for a fancy restaurant with my wife, and you messed up her entree. You messed up her entree.
Yeah.
So
it's funny though. Sometimes people would complain and they would always send me over. They'd say, Anna, table 10 is complaining. You need to go talk to them. I was often just go chat to them.
Drop that nose. We're good to go. But, whatever.
Yeah.
God,
I always would lead with, hey, y'all, how's it going over here?
Yeah, you tried to drop the hey, y'all. We know you're from Westchester. Like, stop that. Cut out that. Cut that out.
Hey, y'all.
Your story is so great. I love the fact you had a mentor. I love the fact you've stuck it out in the hospitality industry. I love the fact that you've moved things around. Your hustle is super inspirational. Again, anybody who gets us 10,000 subscribers, we will get to a table at any one of the affiliated restaurants that Anna's affiliated with.
It's not free, but I'll get you a good table.
No, it's not free. I didn't say free. I will get you a table. Don't. And if you have an event, you can reach out there. But don't ask me to get a restaurant to get a reservation. We do actually. My brother, your cousin. I don't know if it's via you, but he is sick at getting people restaurants. I have friends in the insurance industry who asked me about like impossible restaurants to get in New York, and he just somehow gets them. So he made me a hero. So we love that.
Yeah.
We could, we got to do this more often. Anyway.
I would love to.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast. We asked our guests to leave us with their favorite all-time or timely, inspirational or motivational quote and why they chose that, what it means to them, why it's top of mind. So, Ana Lacher, the floor is yours.
This busy season, we have done a lot of clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. That is the saying, Panthers forever. Actually, it's Texas forever, and it is from the TV show Friday Night Lights, and it is just it has been a reminder to me. We're all doing it, right? Some people that I'm dealing with, it's their first time doing it. Some people that I'm dealing with, to your point earlier, this is the most important event of their career, of their life, of their week, of their period, of their quarter, whatever. And it's just a reminder to handle things with grace and to keep moving forward and to just be as patient as possible and take a minute when you can. So clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Lead with compassion, be hospitable, be thoughtful, take care of yourself. That's one of my big ones.
And I love that. And I love that. I feel like clear eyes. And then when you get to the full heart, if you have a full heart, you almost can't lose and your hustle will be inspired. And you will keep hustling. So thank you, Ana, for being here. You rock.
Thanks
Clear
for
eyes,
having me.
Full heart, can't lose. Thank you so much for giving us of your time during this busy season. You rock.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. As I end every episode, remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.